Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kieran. I'm a spiritual guide and I try to help people using a spiritual perspective. So today I wanted to talk about rest, something that I don't think pretty much any of us do. So we live in a culture where rest is seen as pretty lazy almost, right? So really kind of want to talk about why rest is so difficult for us to really get into. And it's almost a paradox, right? It's almost a paradox. It's like trying to relax. How do you try to relax? Then you're not really relaxing. And that seems to be the biggest blockage of this rest thing, right? So let's first kind of get into why we don't want to rest, right? What's the big deal here, right? So first and foremost, I think, like I already sort of alluded to, this feeling of laziness, feeling like if we were to rest, we wouldn't be achieving anything, right? And this maybe holds true to some sort of egoic idea, right? When we're living in a culture or when we feel a sense of accomplishment by doing things. And it's true, if you do things, if you accomplish things, you feel a sense of pride. You feel like you've done something for the day. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. I think that that's a good thing. I think that if nobody did that in history, then we probably wouldn't be here. We'd still be, well, we probably just wouldn't be here. We probably wouldn't be doing anything. We'd probably just have died a long time ago as a species. So it's a good thing that we have this conditioned sort of behavior to do things. But I feel like in today's society, with the rise of capitalism, or what's already been capitalism, it is very hard for us to simply exist and that be enough for our experience, right? So there's this feeling of laziness that comes along with not doing things, primarily because, yeah, of the way that we're designed, the evolution, but also because of the society we live in. There's also this idea that we'll fall behind if we don't consistently keep up, right? And there's this sort of illusion that if we were to take a break, then the people who are ahead of us would only, jump ahead even more, and that we ourselves would be, 2, 4, 6, 8 steps behind. And it's a crazy illusion because it's almost like saying that success is guaranteed just by the more that you do, which isn't true. That's never been true. You could do 1,000 things and you could be dead tomorrow. So it doesn't really matter how much you do. It's never been true that success has been, obtained by just simply the amount of stuff that you've done. It's usually obtained by a specific thing that you're doing in the right way. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you're born rich. There's lots of different scenarios, but for most of us just trying to start from zero, it isn't really about how much you do. And yet we feel that if we were to take a day or 2 or 3 off, somehow this perceived comparison towards others, they would be so, the comparison, the divide would be so great, even greater, right? And I was sick for the last 4 or 5 days. I don't know what I had. It's cold, slight COVID, I don't know. But whatever it wasn't too bad, but I wasn't really able to speak. I didn't feel good. It's just shitty feelings. So that sucked because I don't like resting, but of course it made me realize why rest is so important, why these feelings that do exist, these comparisons, these feeling like you're lazy, feeling like, another huge part of it is that you weren't taught how to rest, that you weren't taught that it was a good thing, that you thought that rest only comes after you've done something, right? So you had to accomplish something to rest. And yet that's such a silly idea because as soon as you accomplish something, you want to go accomplish something else. You want to do more. You don't really want to rest. That's not really a reward. So it was never taught in a way to help people. So when I get sick, which I often I very rarely get sick. I'm not like a sickly person. I'm sick in the head, but I'm not like a sick physical person. I don't get colds very often. So when I do get sick and it's hard for me to, move, don't really have the energy to do things, I always know that the reason that it's happening is because I need to rest, because I'm pushing myself. And that's true. I always get sick when I go somewhere new and I do too much. It always happens, right? Like I just moved to Oregon and I was doing so much, because I just moved as a new beginning And so I got into this trap where I think, well, I better do as much as I possibly can because this is better make use of my time, do as much, and maybe then I'll get something out of that, right? But all I really got was a cold, and that's exactly what happens, right? So we have these foundations of why rest doesn't work. Maybe we feel lazy, we're not taught how to rest, we were never rewarded with rest, we taught that it was bad, that we're comparing ourselves to others, right? There's lots of these little reasons why rest is such a hard thing to do. I think for me, it's not necessarily laziness. I don't feel lazy by resting. That's not my particular issue with rest. My issue that I was definitely faced with over the last few days is it's not even the falling behind thing. That used to be my issue with rest, and I thought that I had overcome that issue. And I thought, okay, well now, I understand what rest is now, but I really did get to at least I feel I did, to the root of the problem with rest. And I think this may be for a lot of people, but for me, it was coming up as justifying your existence. So you get self-worth from how much you accomplish, okay? So it's a very masculine thing. It's a very man thing, is that they pride themselves on their job, on how much money they have, on their ability to provide the security, right? It's a very masculine idea. It doesn't have to be, of course, but it's rooted in a masculine type of history, right? So for me, I was coming up with these feelings of not doing anything made me feel like I was, I shouldn't be here. It's like, well, I'm just doing nothing. How is that, how am I contributing anymore? And especially when you get into this sort of spiritual awakening journey, you're told, and maybe even you feel intuitively, that you should be helping others, that you should be doing what you can for a collective, or doing, for your purpose and stuff like that. And there's so much emphasis on that side of things spiritually, that I think we forget that it is exactly in line with these old 3D sort of paradigms about how much we accomplish. So now we have this soul purpose to do, and suddenly if we're not doing the soul purpose, then we're failing our own spiritual journey. We're failing life, okay? So it's just new words, but the same old emotions. And that was what's really coming up for me over the past few, 4 or 5 days, was this sort of inability to just exist and feel okay about it, right? So I would really have to force myself, and it's not, you can't really force yourself to rest, but I would just focus, I suppose, on meditating and just being still as much as I could to sort of just feel okay, right? And everybody just wants to feel okay. Everybody wants a sense of peace. And peace is doing nothing. Peace is rest, right? And that's why getting into the feeling of this video that's why it's so important to rest. That's what rest is teaching us. Rest is it's basically a baseline for us, right? It's a place where you can get back to a center, right? So when you're looking at yourself from maybe a bird's eye perspective, and you sort of see how you're going through life robotically, like you're doing this, you're doing that, you're checking off your little list, you know what I mean? And yet no feeling of peace is arising from that, because a feeling of pride is different than a feeling of peace. A feeling of pride may be good, sense of accomplishment. I've done something today. I did this. I made the bed. There's basic self-care that we do, and then there's you have passion. So you did this. You wrote a little bit. You made songs. Et cetera, et cetera. You cleaned up around the house. There's all this stuff that we can do, both for our hobbies, our jobs, our passions, our soul purpose, our career, our health, etc. And yet, when you look at it over time in this sort of bird's eye view, you realize how little it actually gives you. All right, now, I'm sure everybody's different, but for me, it doesn't give me a lot of peace. It doesn't give me peace. It gives me something else than peace. And that feeling that it gives me, that sense of accomplishment, again, that sort of feeling of worth that a lot of us get from our amount of things being done, it's fleeting. It goes away very quickly. Because at the end of the night, or at the end of the day, when it is nighttime and you're laying on your Hello Kitty bed sheets, and it's just you and your glass of orange juice, there's not really a lot left. It's just you and your emotions now. There is no more to do. And then you have trouble sleeping, and you have trouble because you didn't really give yourself time during the day. So it's important to do things for your life, not because you have to, and that's a huge thing to remember. You don't have to do anything, but because you want to. But if we're going from this place of having to do something, obligation to a higher purpose, to a higher calling, to a spiritual journey, to society, to our own sense of insecurity for how much we should exist without, well, I don't have this, so am I allowed to just rest because I don't have all of these things, right? All of those things face you at the end of the day when it's just you're laying down, and because you didn't give yourself a chance. Right? You didn't give yourself a chance to rest. You didn't get back to your baseline. So you start, imagine it just in the day, you wake up at, let's say, 9 a.m., and let's say that's your base, as you're woken up. And then a lot of us automatically get into gear. We're automatically thinking, well, this is what I should do. I should do this. I should do that. And we start going immediately. Even if we're not taking action yet, there's already this sense of, what am I going to do for today? We never start the day like, when should I fit in some time for myself? When will I have the time for myself? Or should I start the day slowly and see how it comes? Should I maybe not make any crazy plans about what I should accomplish and just do what feels natural, right? So there's a lot of inconsistencies with our ability to rest, and our feelings, of course, get in the way of, the feeling of peace that we're trying to accomplish. Because that's really what we're trying to get. We want to do something, and we want the feeling of peace to accompany that. And yet it almost never does, because you don't really get a sense of peace from how much you've done. Like I've already said, you get a sense of accomplishment. And peace is nothing. Nothingness is peace. I mean, that is peace. There is nothing happening. There's nothing going on. You're just existing. And we think that peace is, sitting in front of a nice sunset, watching the beach. That does bring people a sense of peace, but it's not the sunset and the beach that's giving the peace. It's the fact that, that happened to be the scenario, right? So, like, you can't recreate peace, right? I remember this time that I went into this, it was like a campground. It was like a campground in California, and it was weird. I had passed the campground, and I really felt like going inside of it for some reason. I was just taking a drive into the country, and I passed it. And then my tire pressure, like a little notification on my car, told me that my tires were being stupid and that I should pull over and check them out. I checked them out, there's nothing wrong with them. I said, okay, well, it's better if I go back. I went back, suddenly needed to use the bathroom, stopped into the campground, used the bathroom, and when I got out of the bathroom, it was like I honestly entered into a different world. It was insane. It still is, to me, one of the most mystical experiences that's ever happened to me. There was nobody around, even though the highway, which isn't much of a highway, it's just a 2-lane road in the country, but even though it was probably the equivalent of a distance of half a mile away, there was no cars. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't see the highway, but I knew it wasn't too far away. There was nobody else in the campground, like seriously nobody. I probably went in there 5 minutes looping around, didn't see a single person. There was no noise other than this radio that was playing like Fox News propaganda, pretty weird stuff. And I went over to this, like, where it was coming from, which was in this campground number 9, which is, if you know anything about like numbers and stuff, and numerology, that's a pretty like important number. It's an important number to me anyway. And I couldn't find the radio. It's just coming out of nowhere. And that was it was strange. Like, it was literally like emanating from the bushes. It was so weird. I never found the radio. I looked everywhere. And then I was sitting at this picnic bench underneath this tree, and it was like time had paused. It was like I entered a different dimension. It was so weird. Like, I couldn't hear any other sounds. It was just me, this tree on this bench, listening to like the birds, and it was like this own pocket dimension. And I remember when I left, I felt so incredibly peaceful. And I tried to recreate that feeling. I tried to go back there several times, and it never worked out. And so that's just that. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. You can't create the feeling of peace. It happens. It happens naturally because nothing is going on. So it's the same kind of idea with rest. Rest is an opportunity to go back to a baseline within us. And the reason for that is that the baseline gives us peace. If you start your day and you take a moment to appreciate your existence, maybe, I don't know, just that you're alive, and that's fine, things start to go more naturally throughout the rest of the day, rather than thinking into a go-getter mentality. And the go-getter mentality, the fake it till you make it attitude stuff, not only does it hardly ever work, but you exhaust yourself very quickly. And then, you do get sick as a way of stopping yourself from continuing down this path before you're burnt out. And a lot of times we get emotionally burnt out before we even get physically burnt out. And sometimes they happen at the same time. So it's this, never-ending cycle with the amount of stuff that we do. And rest is such a hard thing because we're taught all of these reasons why we shouldn't do it or why it's bad or whatever, and we've forgotten that the basic right of who we are is rest. I mean, it's basic. It's a basic thing. I mean, babies rest. They don't do a lot. Old people rest. They don't do a lot. So, right after you're born, you rest. Before you die, you rest. And everything in between is what? Just a bunch of running around, and it sucks because we use our energy in so many different ways, a lot of times unconsciously, and we're not able to just take a minute to fit in some time for ourselves, right? So meditation's important, sure. Stillness, mindfulness, all this stuff, but peace is a feeling, again, that is nothingness. Peace is saying, I'm okay with everything as it is. I don't have to do anything. That's why that feeling of being in that campground was so peaceful. There was nothing I had to do. Sitting in front of that beach in a sunset, right? It's this image of peace that we have in our minds. You're laying on a Hawaiian beach somewhere where some big-breasted woman serves you a pina colada in a little coconut mug, right? Whatever it is that your little fantasies are that would bring you peace, it involves you doing nothing all the time. Whenever you think of peace, it involves you doing absolutely nothing. So if the feeling of peace is what we're all after, which it is, then rest is how you get there. Rest is that baseline for peace. So it is important. Rest is a super important thing because it gives us the opportunity to feel peace again. And it's something that we all have within us. It's not something that we need to do. We don't need to do anything specific to get peace. In fact, we need to do nothing. You don't need to travel to Europe to find peace. You don't need to go on a backpacking holiday through the Appalachians to find peace. You don't need to have sex with a bunch of people to find peace. You don't need to do drugs to find peace. You don't need to do this, hang out with people, drink this, do that. You don't need those things to find peace. Sometimes you'll get other experiences out of those things, and that's cool. That's a good thing. Good for you. You go through the, hiking through the Appalachians, you get something out of that. But maybe it's physical exercise, maybe it's experiences, maybe it is meeting new people. It's just a sense of the outdoors, something that you like doing. But if you're going in there to find a sense of peace, you'll often not find it. And that's something on the spiritual journey, is a lot of spiritual seekers will go off into the unknown in order to find peace. And I think that eventually the spiritual journey brings you back to a point of sort of zero, where you come to this understanding, as I am, that peace is not found in the amount of things that you do. It is in the ability to rest and not have to justify your experience. This is why I have a strong disbelief in religion, maybe, or God. I don't like the word God, but I, of course, have a very sort of esoteric belief system about the unknown. Of course, that's why I'm doing this channel, right? It's all about the spiritual awakening, but I love history, and if you look back at human history, it's almost like humans don't feel okay with just existing. There's this great sense of guilt, that we shouldn't be here. Like, somebody has to be responsible for me being here because it's not good enough that I just exist. There needs to be someone that has created me. And even on a spiritual journey, we have this soul purpose, we have this mission, we have this reincarnated soul, we have something to do here, we have a mission. Okay, there's all of these words and stuff, but they still act as this pressure. There's still this pressure system. They're just labeled differently. And it's important to take a step back from even your own belief system, from even your own sense of accomplishments, from even the things that you want to do, and that your dreams and your ambitions. It's important to take a step back from them, regardless of how important they are to you, and how meaningful they will be for your future and to others. Because if we don't take a minute to rest and not have to constantly justify our existence to anything, to our higher selves, to God, to the universe, to our friends, to our family, to society, if we can just exist plainly and freely, then our sense of peace will be there waiting for us. You know, it's like peace is always here, but we're always running away from it. We're always trying to do other things to find this, which was already here. It's the baseline. It already started here. And it's a paradox, because it's like if you think about a race, then the starting line is here. And so the goal is to get to the finish line, which is way off camera here, right? And so you leave the start. And that's great when you think about a goal, a sense of accomplishment, which is different than a sense of peace. Going after a goal for a sense of accomplishment should be its own reward. But we often misattribute that with a feeling of peace or happiness or joy or some kind of whatever that we're going to get when we reach that. But that's not what that's supposed to be. It's a goal. Goals are good. You get something, right? But goals for the sense of peace, not very good, because they're not going to be able to give you that, because peace is where you start. It was the baseline. So if you could think of peace as the start, not the finish, then you would never run away from it, because goals and peace are very different. There is no goal of peace. That's a contradiction to, you know, our mind likes to think, but it's a contradiction to what's really going on. Peace was always the baseline. So without rest, you can't find peace. So if you do get sick like I did, it's an opportunity to stop having to do a bunch of stuff and just sit down, lay down, watch a movie, relax. You're not lazy. You don't suck. You know, there's just, it's good. There's just a feeling of, hey, if you wanted peace, this is where it's at. It's just right here with you right now. That's it. And that's peace. If you really get into it and you want to identify the different types of, you know, ways of achieving different things, and you have to separate them, okay? Like a feeling of accomplishment is different than peace, right? And so when you start to understand where all these things lie, happiness, joy, peace, pride, and you see the actions that it takes to get each one, then you can choose accordingly, rather than just think the amount of stuff that you do will get all of it in one, because that's not actually how it works, right? So anyway, guys, that's my video for today. I hope that it helped in some small way. I have a new channel. If you're a Virgo, if you're watching me and you're a Virgo, I have a new channel up. It's called Vibrational Virgo Tarot, some stupid name that I named it. And it's just Virgo stuff. So if you're a Virgo, you want tarot readings, like, you know, stuff like that, guidance for Virgos, love, career, general stuff like that. It is on my channel page, so you can just hop on over there. And that's, you know, if you want to check that stuff out, that's awesome, okay? All right, I think that's all I got for you guys. All right, we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.